Welcome to Crossroads. We're so glad to have you tuning in for our Spark Talk series. You know, sometimes the daily grind can just wear on us, right? And so our hope is that in the midst of this series, in the midst of this hour that you're spending with us, something is sparked in you where you have some new ideas and new fire moving forward. And so to kick us off, we're actually going to spend some time worshiping together. Worship is just an opportunity for us to put prayers to song. And so if you don't believe these words yet, that's totally okay. But I just am asking right now that God would actually spark something in you in the midst of these songs.
Say, my heart cannot contain your love, so I will rejoice. A melody is rising up. Great are you, Lord. Great are you, Lord. Yeah, and all of creation singing the same song. Oh, hallelujah. To you and you alone. Holy, holy, to the one who scattered the stars. Holy, holy, to the one who holds every heart. All of our praise, all for your name. With creation we sing along. Holy, holy. Praise Him from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him, He reigns forevermore. Holy, holy, and all of creation is singing the same song. It's one hallelujah to you and you alone. Here we go. Holy, holy, to the one who scattered the stars. Holy, holy, to the one who holds every heart. Holy, holy, to the one who scattered the stars. Holy, holy, to the one who holds every heart. All of our praise, all for your name. With creation we sing along. Holy, 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 holy. We've nowhere else to go. We've nowhere else to turn. We're kneeling at your door. We're singing, come near. We need your kingdom. We need your kingdom now. Exchange it for our doubt. We're kneeling at your door. We're singing, come near, come here, come near, come here, come near. God of the breakthrough, your promises stand true. You haven't failed us yet. You haven't failed us yet. Our miracle maker, our hope and our savior. You haven't failed us yet. You haven't failed us yet. You've shown us who you are. You've etched it on our hearts. So we're crying out for more. We're singing, come here, come here. So pour your spirit out as our praise is rising now. So we're crying out for more. We're singing, come here, come here, yeah. Our miracle maker, our hope and our Savior. You haven't failed us yet. You haven't failed us yet. You've shown us who you are. You've etched it on our hearts. So we're crying out for more. We're singing, come near, come here. So pour your spirit down as our praise is rising now. So we're crying out for more. We're singing, come near, come here, God. Come near, come here, God. Come near, the God of the breakthrough. Your promises stand true. You haven't failed us yet. You haven't failed us yet. Our miracle maker, our hope and our Savior. You haven't failed us yet. You haven't failed us yet. The God of the breakthrough, your promises stand true. You haven't failed us yet. You haven't failed us yet. Miracle maker, our hope and our Savior. You haven't failed us yet. 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 We've nowhere else to go, nowhere else to turn. So we're kneeling at your door. We're singing, come near, come here. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. And nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus.
You were the Word at the beginning, one with God the Lord Most High. Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you are Christ. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. You didn't want heaven without us. So Jesus, you brought heaven down. My sin was great, your love was greater. What could separate us now? What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. Sing it out. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. Oh, is so sweet, Jesus. Oh, your name is above every other name, Jesus. So sweet is your name. So sweet is your name. Oh, death could not hold, and death could not hold the veil tore before you silenced the boast of sin and grave. The heavens are roll, the praise of your glory. For you are raised to life again. You have no rival. You have no rival. You have no equal. Now and forever, God, you reign. Yours is the kingdom. Yours is the glory. Yours is the name above all names. What a powerful name it is. What a powerful name. Shout it out, come on. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a powerful name it is. And nothing can stand against. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is. The name of breakthrough. Your promises stand true. You haven't failed us yet. You haven't failed us yet. Our miracle maker, our hope and our savior. You haven't failed us yet. You haven't failed us yet. You haven't failed us yet. You haven't failed us yet.
Hey, I love worshiping alongside of you from anywhere you might be right now. If you enjoyed those songs, you enjoyed spending time with God in that way, you can do that more often. You can catch all of those songs on Spotify or on YouTube through the Crossroads music channels. And it's a great way to deepen your relationship with God during the week by having conversations with Him through songs. Well, hey, I'm Lena Schuler, and I'm the Crossroads Anywhere Community Pastor. So glad to have you joining us for church today from anywhere you might be. We are going to get to hear a few spark talks today, talks that should ignite something in us to have a lasting impact, some new ideas that go beyond our normal daily grind. It's going to be good. But before we do that, I want to let you know of some things that are happening around the church, some ways for you to get involved, some ways for you to get connected. One of the things that we're doing as a whole church is something called Summer Social. It's purely a social this summer. Regardless of where you live, we want to give you opportunity to meet with other people who are part of your church, who live near you, around you, maybe even might be your neighbor and you don't even know it yet. So if you head to the Crossroads website, you can check out Summer Social and the locations that that's happening. We have this happening across all parts of the Cincinnati and Lexington areas and part of lots of anywhere communities around the country. And so you can get all of that information on the Crossroads website. You can also chat with us on the website. We'd love to help you get hooked up to the community that is closest to you, wherever you might be right now. You know, I don't know about you, but when I am in a line anywhere, I tend to pull out my phone, right? Like, we just immediately want to pull out our phones and not really pay attention to what's happening around us, kill some time. I am an avid Instagram user. I love scrolling through social media, and I waste so much time doing that. And yet, there's a better way for me to spend my line time than Instagram, and that's actually in the Crossroads app. If you go and download the Crossroads Anywhere app right now, in there, there's constantly new content that's being added and curated and things for you to do that might have a little bit more substance than your Instagram feed. And I often find something in there that I immediately want to share with a friend. I want to send them an article or share a podcast. And so I can't help but think of friends and family who would love the things that I'm reading and watching. And it's really simple and easy to do that from the Crossroads app. So download that today and start using that in your downtime when you're trying to kill some time. When you'd usually go for Facebook or Instagram, maybe switch it up and go for the Crossroads app this week. Well, in the Bible, God says that when we're faithful with the little, he gives us more. When we're faithful with the resources that he's given us, he gives us more resources to be faithful with. And one of the ways that my husband, Nick, and I consistently try to be faithful with the resources that God's given us, the money that he's entrusted us with, is we want to be generous with that money. We say to God, we trust you to take care of us financially, and we want to be faithful with the money that you've given us because we want more from you. We want you to trust us with more. And so maybe today you want to take a step in telling God you trust him by giving a little bit of money away, by being faithful with the money that he's given you. If you want to do that, you can head to crossroads.net/give and just sign up for a one-time gift or maybe even a recurring gift. And today we get to hear from a few different speakers that I think are going to spark something special in you. Let's check it out.
I grew up loving the Beatles. And that song, All You Need Is Love, I believe that to be true. The love is all you need. And then as I started to grow and mature, I realized, is that really true? All you need is love? Is that all? And then I would try to love somebody, and I really didn't know how. Or I would try to love a kid, and the kid didn't know how to receive my love. Here at Crossroads, we have 5,000 to 6,000 kids and students a week. So as you can imagine, I've seen all kinds of things. And as much as I deeply love these kids, some of them have challenging behaviors. And some of it is due to the fact that they've experienced trauma. So you may wonder, how does trauma affect a kid? So imagine this, you're driving your car. And out of nowhere, a vehicle runs a stop sign and almost hits you. Or maybe they actually do hit you. When that happens, the stress hormone cortisol is released. It makes our heart race, our palms sweat, and we become hyper-focused on one thing, and that's protecting ourselves, surviving. When kids live in fear or experience trauma, they have these same symptoms. And trauma can affect people differently. Trauma can be a one-time event, or it can happen over and over, day after day. Trauma is really anything that's messed up or scary that our brains simply can't process. So when a kid is abused or neglected, that's trauma. When kids have to go live with their grandparents because their parents have overdosed, or gone to jail, or simply can't care for them anymore, that's trauma. When children are separated from their birth parents, whether it happens in the hospital when they are born or many years later, that's trauma. But I used to look at these kids when they're challenging behaviors, and I think, what's wrong with you? You are in a safe environment now. You have parents that love you. Or I'd look at their parents, and I'd go, you just need to be tougher on your kid. You need to discipline them. You need to train them up. And then I got to know these kids, and I realized how wrong and judgmental I was. One little guy I met, he had a little plastic grocery bag filled with all of his treasures, which was adorable. But when he brought it to church, it was super annoying because he wouldn't share any of his things with anybody. He didn't even want the other kids to look in his bag. So of course the kids were really curious. And when they'd start to get close to the bag, he'd get angry. And sometimes he'd lash out at them physically. So one day I said to him, "Hey there, little buddy. How about you leave the bag at home next week?" He then told me that because he had been in multiple foster homes and sometimes had to leave quickly, that he'd had treasures that were left behind that he never ever saw again. And this was a smart kid. And he said, "That's not going to happen to me again." So he got his little grocery bag and he put all of the important things in his life in this bag. That little boy, he wrecked me. Because it was through him that God called me to advocate and fight for these kids. Because this little boy, he wasn't a bad kid. He was hurt and he was afraid and his brain was just trying to process what was going on around him. He was scared. The most important thing to him was protecting himself and his possessions. And this little boy, he's the least of these that Jesus talks about. And what we have learned through science, when somebody lives in a state of chronic fear, like this little boy, it actually changes the architecture of our brain, that then changes our ability to cope and to think logically. Experts have also learned that the best therapeutic experiences, they don't always happen in therapy. Actually, they often happen in healthy, safe relationships. Dr. Bruce Perry is a psychiatrist who's worked with thousands of kids who've experienced trauma. And he says, the research on the most effective treatments to help child trauma victims might be accurately summed up this way. What works best is anything that increases the quality and number of relationships in the child's life. So kids are often harmed through relationship, and then it's through relationship that they can begin to heal. But I know being in a relationship with a kid who has experienced trauma is emotionally and physically exhausting. It's much easier to say, "Hey, you know what? There's programs and government agencies for that. I'm just going to let them handle it." But that's why God created the family and community. It's for us to handle it, because kids must be in a nurturing relationship to thrive and to heal. And that's why I am so thankful to be in a community and on a team that's passionate about reaching these kids and their family. A team that doesn't quit when it gets hard. Here at Crossroads, we have kids and students that come who are kicked out at other places, and they're welcomed here with open arms. Because the teams here, they want to create a safe environment for them to hear about a father who will never leave, to hear about a dad who knows them and has a great plan for their life. And I just want to say, if you're here and you're in that fight, well done. God is pleased with the work that you're doing. And I know it is a difficult journey. I also know that when we do this, we get to see the miracle when a kid begins to feel safe and starts to be able to receive love. I also know that God is not finished working through us to reach more of these kids. We aren't all called to care for these kids in the same way. For my family, we were called to take kids into our home and into our family 24/7. You might be feeling the nudge to do that. And maybe that's not you. And that's totally okay. When we look at, currently there are over 400,000 kids in foster care across the nation, and many more who've experienced trauma, and it can seem overwhelming. And you might be sitting there going, "I can't fix that." You're right, you can't fix it. But what we can do is we can take a step towards one. I was recently talking to a young woman, and a couple weeks ago, she wasn't a mom, but she got a phone call. And she was told that there was a relative of hers that was no longer able to take care of their kids. And this brave woman said, I'll do it. I'll take her kids in. And so people kept asking her, what can I do to help? And she'd go, I don't know. Because she was a brand new mom. She had no idea what she needed. And what we could do in this situation is we can take a step towards her and mow her lawn. We can take a step towards her family and say, I'm going to bring dinner to you this week so you and your husband can take a walk or a nap. We can also, for other families that are struggling, we can take a step towards them and offer to take their kids bike riding, burn off some energy and give mom and dad a break. Or we can be a safe, non-judgmental place for them to process their difficult emotions and experiences. We can also commit to praying for them regularly. And if we do that, let them know. Send them notes, send them texts. And every time you do this, we're making a difference. We are taking a step towards the least of these. A quote that really drives me is from Josh Shipp, who spent years in foster care as a kid. And he says, every kid is one caring adult away from being a success story. And I have seen that firsthand. I have a 17-year-old that I was hanging out with recently, and she said to me, I just need somebody to remind me who I am, because sometimes I forget. So I get to tell her, you can do hard things. You are empathetic. You are beautiful. I can also remind her to clean up her social media. And I get to be a part of her life and her story. I want more people to experience that. Remember the kid with the bag that I talked about? Well, every day, his adoptive parents told him and showed him that they weren't going anywhere. And his leaders at church, they found a safe and secure place to store his treasures. And one day, he left his bag at home. And then later, the contents of his bag ended up being scattered throughout his house because he was beginning to feel safe and he knew that he was home. And his story isn't over, but because of the challenges, because of his experiences, he may always have challenges, but he now has relationships and people around him that he can count on. So you know what? Maybe the Beatles weren't that far off. Love is needed, but it's the kind of love that might introduce mess into our life. We might get hurt. We might grow in ways that we never imagined possible. And when we take a step towards that one, we can be the difference that enables that kid to be a success story. Thank you.
Music has always been my main thing, but it's hard to find the quiet space to do that with 3 boys at home. So I started painting last year with my kids, and I just fell in love with it. I realized in painting that I had forgotten how to just play and discover freely. Like I had grown up and traded freedom for rules. But there are no rules in art, and I love that. Painting with watercolors also requires a lot of observation, so it ends up being really meditative for me. Like I walk away from it with a quieter mind and with that childlike delight of play. To be inspired, I look to nature. I love creating pieces that might spark beauty and joy in someone else's space. God is the ultimate artist. His work is unnecessarily beautiful, extravagant, and sometimes downright bizarre. And as many things as I might question or doubt about God, his creativity is not one of them. I'm Andrea, and through painting, God has sparked in me the joy of discovery.
The answer is you've got to be committed. The question is, what does it take to change my life? Hello, Crossroads. My name is Otis Williams, and I want to tell you a story about the one word that changed my life forever. There was a time when I was totally terrified of heights. And one of my life's philosophies is whatever you don't face will stay in your face. So I decided to face and conquer this dream killer once and for all. And to defeat this enemy, I decided to do what any normal person who had a high fear of heights would do. I joined the military and I volunteered to become an airborne paratrooper. So I go to jump school, and jump school is 3 weeks long. You've got ground week, tower week, and jump week. During ground week, you do stuff on the ground. Tower week, you do stuff in the tower. And if you pass and you meet the requirement for ground week and tower week, you move on to jump week. Now, something strange and phenomenal happens at jump week. The black hats, those are the instructors at jump school, they get very nice. And so I'm wondering, why are they being so nice to us now? Because during ground week and tower week, they are the complete embodiment of evil. They are mean, they are toxic, they're trying to do everything they can legally do to get you to give up and quit. And then it dawned on me, we're getting ready to jump out of a perfectly good aircraft for our very first time. So they want the trauma, Kim, to be very low. So it's Monday morning of jump week. We find ourselves in the hangar. We're putting our parachutes on, getting geared up. Black hats are going around there checking. They're making sure everything's okay. And then a black hat yells, he says, "Gentlemen, make sure all the furniture is in one room." And I'm thinking to myself, why is this guy talking about furniture at a time like this? I don't understand. But anyway, we get suited up. The thumbs up come. We take off, and we're down the pathway, getting ready to go on our nice journey. So our very first jump is going to be out of a C-130. We load the monster of this aircraft from the back. The back comes down. We get on. We load it. We sit on the sides of it, and we wait till everybody gets there. And then this thing wheels up. We taxi down the runway, and then before you know it, boom, we're in the air, off into the great blue yonder. So it's about 15, 20 minutes where we reach what we call jump altitude. And now jump altitude for a combat jump is 1,250 feet. So it's not a lot of time if something goes wrong for you to take corrective measures. So at this time, the doors on this C-130 open, the wind rushes in, slaps you across the face, wakes you up as if you were sleeping. And then you've got black hats, one on each side. They stick their head out of the door and they're looking for the drop zone. So they're looking, they come back in and they say, 10 minutes. So you rock. As you repeat it, you go 10 minutes, 10 minutes. That's to let everybody know this thing is about to go down. It's for real. So then they disappear out the door again. They look for the drop zone. They come back. They say 5 minutes. What do? You rock. Let's go. 5 minutes, 5 minutes. There you go. So then they disappear one last time looking for the drop zone. They come back in. Drop zone coming up. First through the pass, stand up, hook up, shuffle to the door. So you got 10 on this side of the plane, 10 on this side of the plane. They stand up, hook up static lines, everything's ready. Then you hear this. First man, stand in the door. Nobody moves. So the black hat says, first man, stand in the door. Nobody moves. So then he looks directly at me. He says, son, you're the first man. Get in the door. And I'm in the door. So he's on the side of me, and then he gives me this speech. He says, you are going to be the first one out of this aircraft. You are going to set the example for the rest of these paratroopers. I need you to watch that light. When that light turns green, you will exit this aircraft. In other words, when this plane lands, you will not be on it. Have I made myself perfectly clear? Yes, I did! So I'm watching the light, right? Boop, 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 boop. Bam, it turns green. Out the door with a nice foot in the rear to help me out. So I'm falling between 20 and 25 feet per second. So it's a nice clip. And I look up and everything is fine until I look up, because I look up and I notice that I have what the military calls is a malfunction. In other words, my chute wasn't open. And so at that altitude, I could see the ambulance leaving and coming to where I'm supposed to land. And I'm like, That's not a good thing right there, right? So I start depending on my airborne training, and I start bicycling. At that point, you can see the black hats on the ground. They're grabbing megaphones, anything they can, and they're saying, faster! And I'm thinking, dude, I'm giving her all I got, Captain. I mean, I'm bicycling as fast as I can. So I'm bicycling, and all of a sudden I start turning. This is a good thing, right? Very good. So I'm turning, and I'm turning, and I'm turning, and bam! All of a sudden my chute opens, and I'm like, this is awesome. Then I clearly understood what the sergeant was talking about when he said, make sure all your furniture is in one room, because mine was not. Anyway, I hit the ground really hard. Bam! The medics are there. They're checking me out, making sure everything's okay. They were absolutely amazed. I didn't break anything. One of the black hats is there, and he says, son, how you doing? I'm like, I'm all right. I'm doing pretty good. He says, you feel pretty good? You feel good? Yes, Sergeant, I feel great. He says, all right, gather your chute, and let's go back to the hangar and get ready for another jump today. I'm like, excuse me? Today? He was like, yes, today. I'm like, why today? And he says, because we're expecting bad weather tomorrow, and we got to get as many jumps in as we can so we can get you guys to graduate by Friday. And I'm like, oh my God. Gather all my stuff. We back in the hangar, redoing the whole thing. Now, my second jump was absolutely flawless. It was wonderful, total different from the other one. After I exited the aircraft, I'm descending at a nice rate. I can sip lattes, all that kind of great stuff, right? I am able to see for miles. It's a state of bliss. And in this state of bliss, I clearly heard God say to me, look up. So I look up, and then he says, can you get back in that aircraft? And the answer was no. And he said, now you know what it takes to change your life. Commitment. You see, ladies and gentlemen, here's what I believe. That the blessings that God has for you and me live on the other side of doubt and fear. And to get on the other side of doubt and fear, it takes commitment. It takes giving everything you've got, holding nothing back. It's taking all your chips, pushing them to the center of the table and saying, I'm all in. It is when your ship reaches the shore, you give the order to burn the boats and you say, either I die or I win. It is counting the cost and jumping out of the aircraft anyway. It's to get to the other side. Now, I know that level of commitment may be a little scary for some of you. But let me leave you with this, a little word of encouragement from God's word. In Philippians, in that book, God's word reminds us that we can do all things through Christ which strengthens us. So here's the command I'm leaving you with. Commit, make the jump, and go get what God has for you, and I'll see you on the other side of doubt and fear. Airborne all the way. Hoop!
When I put on this uniform, I drive to the ballpark every day. This just feels like I've been doing it for a long time.
Since joining the team in 2009, Jeremy Affeldt has been an integral part of the Giants bullpen.
Got him. Oh, that's a good hook right there. You know, I don't start, I don't throw 7 innings, I don't hit homers, I don't steal bases. I got to come in for those 1 or 2 innings or 1 or 2 batters and make the best pitches possible.
Got him! With the 3rd lowest ERA in postseason history, Jeremy's dominance during the playoffs cannot be overlooked.
First the pitch. He struck him out swinging.
This is my 3rd experience in Cincinnati. This one looks like there's a lot more smiles than my other 2. My first one was when I played here and we lost almost 100 games. There wasn't a lot of smiles around Cincinnati. My second one was in 2012. You guys were all smiles until we hurt your feelings in the NLDS and took 3 games straight from you. Went on to win the World Championship. We got a really nice ring out of it. I, on the behalf of the San Francisco Giants, thank you and the fans and all the athletes that tanked the series to let us go on. Appreciate that. So, allows me to come up here and talk and feel good about myself. my chest up a little bit more than it was. So, no. But 22 years of age, I made it to the major leagues. It was a great experience for me. I accomplished a dream because at 12 years of age, I was sitting in the Oakland Coliseum. It was one of my first baseball games that I ever got to see, watching the Oakland A's. And my favorite pitcher that I used to watch on TV was Dave Stewart. So he was pitching that day, and so my dad got us some really good seats, like right in the lower part of the stadium. And you're right with all the players. I mean, they look massive. I mean, all my favorite guys are there. Mark McGuire, Jose Canseco, Dave Stewart. You're just looking at all these guys, and you're looking around Connie Lansford. You're looking at all these guys. You're like, man, they are massive. Well, they're massive for a reason that we now know why. They're a little bigger than they probably should have been. They weren't drinking protein shakes, I can promise you that. But they were still big and gigantic, and it was just an awesome thing to see. And I remember looking at my dad, and I said, Dad, I'm going to play here one day. And he looked at me and goes, what? I said, I'm going to play here. I'm going to be a Major League Baseball player. He said, you're going to be a Major League Baseball player? I said, yes, sir. I said, I'm going to play on that field. And he patted me on the head like all good dads do and said, go for it, kiddo. And he didn't put me in any baseball camps. He just let me go play baseball. And then when I was 22 years of age, I walked into the Coliseum through center field where the bus dropped us off, and I got my little Nokia phone out. And you guys remember that Nokia phone, man? It had like the snake game, like 1379. Some of you generation, your iPhone generation. Well, my generation, our game was the worm game, and you had to chase this little dot around in a circle, and you had to do it so many times and try not to hit your tail end, you know? And all we had was 1379. We didn't draw on a screen, so it was a fun game, and you got mad, and you could actually throw that phone down, and the screen didn't break. It was sweet, right? So I got out my Nokia phone and I said, hey, Dad. I called my dad and he answered, and he still has a telephone. He still today has a landline. It's impressive. And I said, Dad, I said, you know where I'm at? He said, yeah, you're in Oakland. I said, yeah, you remember happening here in Oakland? He said, what are you talking about? I said, Dad, I see the very seats we were sitting in when I was 12 years old, and I said I was going to pitch here. And tonight, Dad, I pitch in Oakland. And it hung up the phone. And I looked at my phone and I was like, man, so I hit talk again. And my mama answered the phone. I said, Mama, what happened? I was talking to Dad. He's like, he's crying. He's a military guy, man. He dropped bombs for a living. They don't cry, you know, so he didn't want to hear me. So he said he's crying. He's just so pumped that you accomplished your dream. And he just couldn't, he didn't want you to hear him cry. And I was like, all right, well, tell him I'm here, man, and I'm excited. And that's when I kind of realized what I had done. I had accomplished a dream. In 4 years, I hated the game of baseball. I hated it. Absolutely hated Major League Baseball. Didn't want any part to do with it. It was miserable. And the problem is it's a very lonely feeling when you hate doing what you do for a living, especially Major League Baseball. Because if I'm going to go to you and I say, hey, man, what do you do? And you tell me what you do, whatever, you know, zookeeper or Zoo York or whatever, you know, you got the shirt on. So, you know, it is a zoo, by the way, you're right. So you know, and I said, well, I play Major League Baseball and I hate it. I'm sure you would be like, dude, I totally understand the feeling. I would hate it too if I played Major League Baseball, man. It would stink so bad, man. I mean, I just don't even know why you'd even want to do that for a living, you know? Like, I didn't have anybody I could tell that I hated the game of baseball. And it was super scary for me too, because I was like, man, I don't have anybody I can talk to. No one's going to relate to me, and I feel like alone on an island here, and I don't know who I don't even know what I'm doing on this planet right now. Why am I in baseball? What am I called to do? God, why do you have me do this? It's Groundhog's Day. I go to the field, I get booed, I get cheered. I go to the field, get booed, and booed some more, and then I get cheered a little bit. You know, I played with Kansas City in the early 2000s. We got booed a lot. So think Cincinnati now, think that like every year, okay, right? So it was just miserable, right? Like, it was just a tough deal. And I remember sitting on my counter crying. I wanted to go home, but my wife wouldn't let me quit because she's like, you know you can't quit. And you know, as an athlete, you're not going to do well if you quit. You got to run this gauntlet, play it out. I'm here for you. And she was here for me, but I was just so frustrated with doing terrible. I got put on the DL one time for a broken fingernail. That's how it was going, okay? So it was a really bad deal. So it was just a miserable time, and I was begging God in 2006. I'm like, please trade me. Either trade me or release me, because if you release me, I'm gonna take the uniform off. I'm gonna go home and say I gave it my best try. I didn't quit. I said, but if you're not gonna release me, God, then you gotta trade me because I gotta get out of Kansas City because it's making me miserable to be here. I hate going to work every day. And 5 minutes before the trade deadline on July 31st, 2006, I got a call from my GM. He said, I've just traded you to the Colorado Rockies. And I was like, oh, awesome. Oh, that's, okay. Oh, man. God, sorry it didn't work out. You know, Dayton, man, I just tried. It just, I know what you had to do. You got to do what's best for the team, and I hope you got somebody for me, blah, blah, blah. And then I told my wife, said, what's going on? I said, I just got traded. And she starts screaming. And I was like, hey, honey, the GM's still on the phone. Back it down a little bit, and she's like, I don't care. I'm packing your bags. This is awesome. So I'm like, all right. So she's packing my bags, and I go to the field, and she meets me at the airport, and we're flying into Colorado. And I'm flying in. My wife still has to get our dog and stuff packed up, so she stayed back. And as we're landing, I realized that there's no gravity in Colorado, right? And if you understand what happens in baseball, like when it gets hit in the air, it's supposed to come down. If it doesn't, it's a homer. Well, it doesn't ever come down in Colorado, right? So you try. In fact, the first guy I faced was named Prince Fielder, and I threw this curveball, and first pitch I ever threw in Colorado, I threw a curveball, I hit it for a homer. And all I heard was, welcome to Colorado from the crowd. I mean, it was getting worse for me, right? It just was not good. And I remember I was staying in my hotel, and I got up that morning, and the mermaid was calling to me, right? I was like, ooh, I got to get to Starbucks. And so I was going towards the Green Mermaid, and I was just walking down the street, just remember how miserable I am. I'm like, I literally, first pitch I throw, I give up a homer. I don't want to, failure. It's nonstop failure. I don't want to do this. And I was just begging for a way I could not. It's like God was keeping me in prison and laughing at me by getting me traded to Colorado at the same time, because I obviously wasn't very specific on my prayer. And so be specific when you ask him for stuff, okay? So I remember sitting there, and I see this girl sitting, I'm at this street corner. I see this girl sitting across the street, and she's kind of sitting in front of this Rite Aid and the Starbucks right next to it, right? And she's got this cup of noodles in her hand, dry cup of noodles, no water. She's just eating this cup of noodles. So I walk across the street, and I kind of stop, and I look down at her, and she's got a split lip, black eye, torn jeans. She did not have a good night the night before, trembling. And there's a lot of street kids in Denver, right? There's a lot for what they congregate there. And I reached down and I touched her on her shoulder, and she jumped away from me, and I said, hey, I don't want anything from you. I just want to know if you want something to eat. And she said, yes, please. So I went into Starbucks, and I got that green sludgy drink. Naked says on it. It's like, looks really bad, tastes pretty good, right? Just looks like algae, right? So I'm like, I think I need that for sure. And then I need whatever has the most sugar. And so she handed me a blueberry muffin. Another fun fact, blueberry muffins have the most sugar in Starbucks according to the employees. So they handed me a blueberry muffin. So I walk out, hand it to the girl, and she looks up and rips the bag from me. And she looked at me and said, thank you. And I stared down at her, and it was probably about 5 or 6 seconds. It felt like 30 minutes. And it's like we met, we locked eyes, and it's like we connected in an amazing way. I just stared at that girl, and she wasn't saying thank you for the food. She was saying thank you for letting me know I exist. Because when we see homeless people, a lot of times we get the fake phone call, or temporarily deaf, or we randomly blind and we can't see them, or we'll go on the other side of the street, because it's an awkward deal, right? Like it can be awkward. We've all been in the cities where homeless people are around, and it kind of feels weird, it feels awkward, and it doesn't feel safe. And when she said that, see, I wear nice clothes. I was living in a 5-star hotel. I went to an unbelievable office called a baseball stadium. I had a wife, I had a home. I didn't have problems with bills. I ate at nice restaurants. And I looked at that girl, and she didn't have nice clothes. She didn't have a job. She didn't have anywhere to live. Yet our realities were the same, because we were both lost, we were both lonely, we were both scared, and neither of us had anyone to talk to about our current state. And I remember when she said thank you, it was thank you for letting me know I existed. And that was something I needed so bad at that moment. was to be able to be something for somebody because I didn't feel like I was being anything for anybody. And I needed God to encourage me. And he traded me and he put me in front of that girl that day for a reason, because it changed my life. If you flip open my baseball card, the numbers all of a sudden get really good. And I'm not saying he all of a sudden just started blessing me. I think it was always there. My talent was always there. My ability to succeed was always there. I just didn't have a reason to do it. I didn't have that desire to why I was a baseball player. What was I a baseball player for? What was I gifted to be a Major League Baseball for? Because if it was to be just a Major League Baseball player, if my giftings were just to be a professional athlete, it didn't make a whole lot of sense because I'm not bringing a lot of impact to anybody. Except for I'm entertaining America for $12 beer, which is cheap nowadays, in the baseball stadiums, and a $30 ticket and $25 parking ticket to park. And they boo me. And that's what I'm here for. That's not what I want to do. So I went to the field that day, and I felt so amazing sitting in the bullpen. I said, why do I feel good? For the first time in like 4 years, I don't feel depressed to play the game of baseball. And I went to my hotel room that night, and I did what I told myself I'd never do. I became the guy that just stuck his fingers in the Bible and just like opened it up and thought God would talk. Some of you had done it, and then you're like looking down, and I've tried it multiple times. It's never really worked, but because then you open it up and all of a sudden it's like death becomes you, and you're like, oh, that's great, that's what I needed. You get all these awkward verses being thrown at you, and so you're like, I don't really know what that means. So I did it again because I was that desperate, and it worked. For the first time ever, it was like God knew. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to laugh at him this time. I'm actually going to help him out, right? And it was Matthew 25, no joke, where it separates the sheep and the goat when he comes back. And the guy says, well, how do I know if I'm a sheep and a goat? And he says, well, when you do the least of what you've done, whatever you do the least of these, you do to me. He's like, well, how do I know what I'm going to do? He's like, well, if you don't visit me in prison, or you don't feed me when I'm hungry, or if you don't give me something water when I'm thirsty, you didn't help me out. So you're not in. And he's like, how do I know if I did that? He goes, whenever you did it to someone who is in prison, to someone who is hungry, to someone who is naked, to someone who is in need. And if you do it for any of them, you'll do it for me. And I remember what I did for that girl. And I remember my heart was so pure when I did it for that girl. And I felt so good. It was like I fed Jesus that day and he fed me back. And he changed my life. And I finally understood Luke, where it says, you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and you love your neighbor as yourself. They are the same. And when I'm hungry, I want something to eat. When I'm thirsty, I want something to drink. And when I want to go live somewhere, I go to my house, right? And when I'm naked, I'm definitely going to want to put on clothes. Unless it's Cincinnati, then you're tempted, to just walk around naked. It's way easier. It's a lot cooler, So, so you get all these, and I remember feeling that, and just God just saying, Jeremy, this is what I want you to do. I want you to use baseball as a platform. Your success will only be the success that I want it to be if you can encourage others and show others and give others the opportunity to have success. And I said, how do I do that? Do to the least of these what they need done, and give them a chance to be able to look at their dad or mom one day and say, one day I'm gonna be. Because everybody deserves the opportunity to say, one day I'm gonna be. And everybody who has ever said one day I'm gonna be, that has had some hard times come where they weren't able to achieve it, deserve a chance to still achieve it. And I started an organization called Generation Alive right after that. And it dealt with young people in poverty. And we now go into schools and we have these action teams in these public schools, public high schools. And the only reason I'm able to get into half of them is because of what I did for a living. And I go in and we start these action teams. And we basically tell kids to understand what poverty looks like in your community. What does poverty look like? What are the pains that poverty causes? And how can we alleviate those pains through acts of compassion? And it's not feeling bad for the person, it's actually putting it to action. So you don't look at someone that's struggling and being, man, that sucks, keep walking. Or too bad for them. Or use the religious jargon, right? I'll pray for you. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, most people won't do it. Yeah, I'll pray for you. Okay, I'll come back next week and I'll ask what your prayer was. Because we don't really know what to say, right? Compassion is actually doing it. When Jesus hung on the cross, he even created an act of compassion. When he fed 5,000 people, there were acts of compassion. So I started an organization that did that, and in the last 5 years, we've fed over 2.5 million people. And kids have had to, and all youth have had to raise the money. All kids have had to raise the money. It's 25 cents a meal. We also help rescue women out of human trafficking and create backpacks that have their personal things that they need when they get rescued. And they share the love of Jesus with other people, and they feed people they don't even know, because it's a simple act of compassion. Because in every community there's hunger, in every community there's trafficking. And now kids are finding now our action teams are actually finding other areas that there is poverty and what is the pain that poverty causes, and they're creating their own ideas. It's very, very amazing. And I had a kid come up to me and say, why does this feel so good? And I said, are you asking me the question? Because if you ask me the question, I'm in a public school. So I said, if you ask me the question, I can give it to you. So you asking me why you feel so good? They said, yeah, why does it feel so good to do this? I said, because that's the love of Jesus. And the kid looked at me, right? And I said, it's unconditional love. And we're all built for it, and we're all born with it. We just have to find it. So my loneliness came from the fact that I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing. And I got very lonely in an area that most people would think you were not lonely. And it took a young girl on the street to be able to change my thought process, and God put her there. And for the rest of my career, I was not lonely. I was very fulfilled. 3 rings to prove it, just saying. But I'm messing with you. I'm messing with you. I got an extra 2 minutes, so I thought I'd make a joke. So I just wanted to tell you, I said, I've been very fulfilled in what I did, and I know why I played, and I had my why. And I know who I am, and I know what I played for, and I still do it to this day. And I love sharing the love of Jesus through acts of compassion. And that's how I found who I was. And I got to tell my dad at 12 years old, one day I'm gonna be, and I got to accomplish that. And when I retired, my dad was on the field on my retirement speech, and I hugged my dad. And I said, Dad, you gave me the chance to say one day I'm gonna be, and I'm hugging you because I got to tell you that I'm happy that I became it. And I'm a better man for it, and I've got more to do. It was because of the platform that you gave me by encouraging me. And I found my place in Jesus and my identity in Christ. And now I can give to others and love other people. God bless you. Thank you for letting me share with you.
Man, how fun was that? I hope that something new was just sparked in you. You know, we have a team of people that would love to pray for you and who would love to help connect you. So if you head to the Crossroads website, you can chat with us on the website, and we'd love to get you connected into a summer social near you. So just head to crossroads.net and you can find all of that there. We'll see you next week for week 3 of Spark Talks.